Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Good Girls. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I love Dave kind of like having everyone in the room and just being like, you know, he keeps like asking a question and it's like Annie's the only one that keeps raising her hand to answer it. And it's like, you know, what you're supposed to, and it's like, be on time, but then like you have Ruby be like, no, but we were here way before you. He's like, no, you're supposed to, and you're just kind of like, what are we? He's like, not have sex with so and so, and you're like, oh my god, what? Annie and Ruby are shocked because it's like, really? We're down this path again? Really? Even though you tried to kill him, even though he tried to kill your husband, we're here again? And she's like, nothing happened. He's like, that's not what happened with the wire. She's like, I mean, to be fair, you told me to distract him, kind of doing whatever I needed to. So there's a little justifications on Beth's part, but the argument would probably be like, you could have found a different way to distract him. Because it's also like, we have nothing, because it's like, oh, we're at his grandma's house. He's like, you know, it's like, no, I thought it was... I guess I took that wrong. Like, maybe that's going to be the twist, but I'm like, I'm fairly certain when he was saying, like, oh, this is the family business. Like, when he said boss, he legitimately meant boss. It's like, I didn't know that was his grandma. Like, I don't know, because they're not interpreting it as like, oh, he was legitimately at his grandma's house and that she's the boss behind all this. It's like, I believe she is. I legitimately think what they're setting up Rio's thing was that it was a family business. That's how I immediately took it. But I guess the whole point was to kind of make you go, oh, make you think that. But in actuality, it is. I think it really is. But they're kind of taking it. It's like, because listening to The Wire, it's like, nothing related to the shady side of things. It's because, well, later on we kind of find out why. And that's because he ended up finding The Wire, so that's probably why they were hush-hush about business. So they wanted to kind of keep up the front, because we don't know how long he's known about The Wire. I mean, like, you never know, like, the time frame between episodes, like, how much time has passed between last episode and this episode. So he might have found The Wire immediately, and it's only been, like, maybe a day or something like that. But, obviously the conversation is like, you know, about, well, what did he do? It's like, she's like, nothing happened. It's like, did it involve your vagina? Because it was like, you know, she's like, you know, and it's like, oh, did it involve your vagina, his penis? It's like, no. Did his like mouth? It's like, no. And it's like fingers, and it's like, I did what I had to do. And it's like, really? At his abuelita's house? It's like, well, he calls her grandma. So, and I love that Phoebe walks in and is like, so what were we talking about? And it's like Ruby and Annie just kind of giving Beth the look of shame. Which, that ties into Ruby's side of things, because Ruby was like, okay, Stan, we're going to have to, like, to sell these bags and stuff like that, we're going to have to worm our way around this. We're going to pretend like we live in this really extravagant place, because that way the people in the neighborhood will be like, oh, and more likely to buy the stuff from us. They just want to kind of live a certain lifestyle and stuff like that, so they won't ask too many questions type of thing. But it's like, you know, Stan is like, all right, but we can't let Beth know. And she's like, right. And he's like, we super can't because blah, blah, blah. He keeps going on. She's like, right. He's like, wait, you know I'm talking about Beth Boland. Exactly. Because for her, it's like, Beth doesn't always involve us with everything. There's a lot of stuff that she kind of keeps hush and secret. So, like, she kind of, to be fair, it is a situation like, I don't think she should say, like, hey, to make sure he doesn't find the wire on me, I had to let gang friend Rio finger me. Like, I mean, it's not like she's proud of it, but I guess the argument is also like, it lets us know what side of the fence you on, because you banged it out with Rio in the past. So I think that's kind of lets them know, like, oh, the fact that you keeping that secret too, meaning like maybe you were kind of into it and not really like slippery slope and everything, especially because like their futures, their lives are on the line, because hey, they could get a fresh start with this Secret Service deal, but also like it can all come crashing down, plus Rio could end up killing them all. So it's an element of a little bit of everything. Because that's also the thing that comes up later on, too. Like, because Ruby doesn't tell them for such a long time. But when the time comes, like, the confrontation happens. And it's like, Beth is calling Ruby out for, like, yeah, like, your shady business, like, the shady business deals you got going on matter because it could jeopardize the deal we're all getting from the Secret Service. And he's like, oh, that's true. But then, like, Ruby's like, yeah, but you doing what you're doing, it's the same thing as, you know, and it's like, and he's like, well, that's true as well. And it's like, you got to pick a side. And he kind of ultimately does it. But it is a situation where, because the point Ruby was getting across to us, and this is what Stan says, that the rules never apply to her. I think Ruby's the one that actually said that, like, the rules never apply to her. That's always been, like, Beth is the reason why. Like, everyone's played their own part. It's why they're deeper. But it all stems back to Beth, because Beth has always been the one, like, she wants to make excuses a lot of times about why they're in it. But it's like, no, when they've had opportunities to get out, Beth has kind of dug them deeper, and now they're in, like, a very impossible situation because Beth enjoys it. She likes the power. Like, she she made an excuse like saying this to Rio, but it is true. She doesn't want to go back to being just a household mom. She wants to keep doing this criminal stuff because she enjoys it. She feels powerful. She's really good at it, you know? Whereas Annie and Ruby, they're kind of down because, like, well, we kind of have to be because it's our lives on the line. But, like, Beth is in it more so because she enjoys it, but she tries to hide it because she doesn't want to admit that she enjoys it as much as she does, you know? Because I think that's the point. She's, like, lying to so many people. She's lying to herself. Because that's the thing. Rio's literally the only one can see her for who she really is because she, once again, lying to herself, lying to Annie, lying to Ruby, lying to Dean, you know? Because this whole conversation about, like, oh, can you, you know, having to pretend to be someone you're not, that's a conversation Ruby and Stan had, and Ruby's like, duh, like, I kind of do that every day, but it's like, Beth to an even extreme extent, just because it's like, oh, she's putting on this air in front of not just, like, the normal people she's supposed to keep up appearances around, but even the people that are in the know about what she does and what they're involved in, she still kind of lies to them to a certain extent. So it's a thing where you can see where Ruby's coming from. You can also see where Beth comes from. Personally, I feel like Ruby has more of a case because it's like, you keep a lot of secrets. You kind of end up being the deciding factor in a lot of stuff related to Rio. Like, because you're the one he's super into. The rest of us are kind of like, God, what would be the word? Like, we're tacked on to you. You're the main thing, and we're just kind of like this side, you know, the side pieces. Weird and effed up way to say that, but it's like, that's kind of what it is. Like, Beth's his main squeeze, and Ruby and Annie are kind of his side pieces to a certain extent. It's a whole weird thing. But nevertheless, it's like, hey, I need a bank to put my money in, but it's like, all right, so Beth can't do it too much heat on her because, well, Dean can't do anything because he's accused of, you know, laundering money. So the same amount of heat is on Ruby and Annie, so they can't do it. So it's like, okay, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have to find another mom to do it. So they're setting up Phoebe to play the role of a mom, and it's just like, she steps in and she's like, oh, look at how I'm dressed and everything. So, and just like, Ruby's like, we're dead. So she has to play the role of a mom, and I love that. It's like, well, they've all got practice being parents, so it's like, you know, they're running her through the drill. It's like, okay, so what do you have to do at so-and-so? It's like, school pickup. No, you idiot. It's like, no one said school pickup, just pickup. You know, and it's like crunching up the cereal in their pocketbook, you know, with the pan being like, now it's a mom purse, and all this stuff. And her just playing, it's so interesting, like, they're giving her a class on how to be a mom and everything. So, they're preparing her for it. I even love the whole thing when they're sitting down about to have dinner and stuff. Well, not at the restaurant and everything. It's like, okay, you guys need to leave. It's like, what? It's like, your full party isn't here, so we can't serve. Which is like, most places aren't like that. It's kind of like, okay, you can go ahead and get seated when your party gets here. And that's just a weird thing, because it's like, yeah, there's other tables. It's like, yeah, but it won't serve this party. It's like, but that's like 150 people. Can't it be at some other table? Yeah, but this is their favorite table. It's like, I think that lady was just being difficult, but I'm like, because, I mean, once again, maybe it depends on the restaurant, but like, normally it'd just be a thing of, well, you can, I don't know, maybe there are certain places that are like, no, your entire party has to be here, but most places, you know, especially if you have like a reservation or something like that. Well, she did have one, but it's like, oh yeah, I told like the manager, yeah, but it's like the manager's not here today, so I'm the one kind of taking charge of things. But it's like, usually it's like, if you have a reservation, you can go ahead and wait for the person to show up, and it's like, oh yeah, like, your party's already here type of thing, you know. So that's what I was like, once again, maybe it's just a restaurant thing, you know, someone can correct me, but I'm like, she was being a little like difficult to a certain extent. Maybe part of me wonders, did she have like a hookup with that previous party, in the sense of like, maybe they're family or friends or something like that, so that's why. But luckily Rio shows up. I also love the whole thing about like, oh yeah, there's like listening devices all over the place, and it's like, honk twice, takes a while, beep beep, and he does it, honk 3 times if you can hear me. And it takes a while. I was like, uh-oh. And it's like, beep, beep, beep. It's like, yeah, never enjoying it. But then Rio's sitting down, like, gets introduced to Carolyn with the Y. It's like, obviously, the whole thing about her children and stuff like that. It's like, oh, cool, 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 cool. And he's ordering. It's like, yeah, oh, can we get that to go? And it's like, wait, what? It's like, oh, yeah, like, you never know who's listening. So it's like, once again, I mean, that's what they were saying. Like, oh, Rio's smart. He's going to pick up on things. So the entire time you're like, because that bastard always knows more than you think he does. He's always a step ahead, but like I said, that means he knew about the wire and everything, but it's like he was stringing them along because he liked seeing them squirm. He was actually probably trying to see, like, I'm actually curious how much effort you guys are going to put into this. So it's like, okay, so let's go to your place, Carolyn. And it's like, wait, what? It's like, oh yeah, let's go. Best place is close. It's like, no, I want to go to her place. And it's like, oh, okay. And it's like they're driving there. It's like, oh, a few more blocks. Haha. Oh, we're in the car. Why can't we talk here? It's like, no, we're going to wait till we get to her place. Oh. Luckily, Dave had set everything up ahead of time. And it's like, oh, hey, fine, come in. And then immediately, like, Rio's kind of acting like everything. It's like, she's like, oh, the glasses are in the right. I mean, not your right, my right, sorry. And it's like, oh, yeah. All right, well, yada yada, explain the business. Oh, so we want to get rid of that orange juice. It's a week expired. That right there to me was like oh, he knows what's what. Because the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, you have orange juice. It's like, I mean, people keep, there's plenty of stuff in my refrigerator that, like, it's like a couple of days expiring and can be. Especially because other people, especially my family, would, like, you know, here and, like, at home or whatever, would be like, oh, yeah, like, stuff would stay in there forever because it's like, right, someone was saving something and they just forgot it was in the refrigerator just because, like, whatever the case may be. And I love that Dave pops out being like, yeah, we didn't get none of that because I literally found this place last minute. I didn't even have enough time to text you back to let you know what's what. So this place isn't even wired, so nothing he says can be used. It's like, oh, here's a lovely couple who actually owns this place. Secret Service, thanks you. So it's like, okay. So while Ruby was dealing with all of that, Stan had to handle everything on his own, and I love it being like, oh, who gave you this place? He won't appreciate it. It's like, oh, so-and-so, and it's like, Louis Vuitton, and it's like, huh, and it's like, have some cheese, and it's like, oh my god, like, this deer's, like, Ruby said, blah, 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 it's like, oh, like, because she's very, like, animal-friendly or whatever, and it was like, yeah, it got hit by a truck, so we had to put it down. We thought this would be the best way to honor him. It's like, well, what about the other three? And it's like, that truck killed the entire family. And it's like, enjoy the cheese. Like, he had to stumble his way through a lot of that. So, obviously, later on, he's pissed at Ruby. And he says the line of, oh, like, what she did. Like, once again, he feels like, you're choosing Beth over me. You know, so, which, obviously, she's done a lot of stuff for your sake, too. So, don't get it twisted, Stan. But for him, it just feels like, oh, what you had going on with Beth is more important. First and foremost, Beth's situation is Ruby's situation. They're in that situation equally. Like, if she wasn't there to keep that shit on lock, your wife would be dead. So it's like, he's giving her flack because he's like, oh, you're choosing Beth's circumstances over. It's like, no. Ruby doing what she's doing is self-preservation as well. Because basically what ends up happening is like, oh, they came up like $6,000 short because he sold the purses a little too high price. So it's like, well, what are we going to do? So ultimately Ruby brings it up to them about like getting the money. At first she's like, I got some bills. It's like, how much do you need? 6,000. It's like, all right, fine, we're running this scam, and ends up, you know, the whole conversation I discussed about earlier. So at the end of the day, they give Ruby the money, and they bring it up to Gene. Gene's like, oh, man. And he talks about the whole thing about, like, songs that are like herpes, where it's like, basically, when you have sex to them, it kind of gets stuck in your head. So it's like, oh, cool, yeah. All right, well, they're like, well, we just want to take our cut. He's like, no. I'm going to take this money, I'm going to invest it. And they're like, nah, we're good. We rather take. He's like, you're going to miss out on the next Apple. Nah, we're good. Next Google. It's like, nah, we're good. We're sure. And it's like, he's like, nah, I can't let you do it. So it seemed like he was kind of being like, don't worry, I'm going to invest it for you. Like, I chalked that up to being a thing of he doesn't want to lose them. So for him, it's like, oh, I'm going to run my fake purse company. But also it's like, this way he makes sure they stay in debt. Because it's also like, you guys are good workers. You did good. You actually crushed it. So I'm not going to let you go. So I'm making an excuse like, no, I'm doing this for your sake. But more so it's about my sake so I can keep this business afloat. Which Stan and Ruby are immediately like, he's going to get caught. It's like, yep. Like, because Gene's not like the smartest person ever. Like, yes, he's kind of, you know, he can be scary like Rio. Once again, all we got to do is turn Rio against Gene. Like, that could turn into a whole thing. And I feel like that might be where they're going. Like, we might be able to point Rio towards Gene and either use his situation as a means of laundering the money, you know, so it might be bringing him into the fold, or Rio kills him and takes over the whole operation. Strong possibility. We'll see. But when it was all said and done, it's like, nope, I figured you out. I found the wire and everything, and it's like, damn. So it's like, hey, all right, reach in the glove box, touch this gun. I got a secret compartment where I've got the gun left away now. So it's like, which also begs the question, like, I'm assuming because he has her touching it again, that's a separate gun. Because I talked about it before, like how Annie got Rio's right-hand dude, like, to handle the gun situation. That still hasn't come back around. Like, I don't know if that's something that's kind of in between episodes that was kind of dealt with that we just never heard about. Like, Rio having an issue with it or anything like that. Or, like, Rio finding out. We don't know. I don't think it was ever brought up. Someone had corrected me by being like, it's most likely, I thought Annie was suggesting let me put my prints on a gun, but someone had corrected me being like, no, it's most likely Annie telling him to get rid of the gun and it's like, but still there's something there that still needs to kind of be answered with, because that's the whole thing too. Like, yeah, Annie's got her secrets as well, because she ain't never tell any of them about that, because she was looking out for her sister, so that's eventually going to come and circle back around, but I'm curious in like what shape or form and like, you know, what correlation it has to this new gun that like Beth is being forced to touch, like what crimes are associated with it or whatnot. We know what the previous one was connected to. I don't know. But there's also an element of, you know, it's like, yep, he's going along with it. Like, oh, we're making a deal and everything. And by the time Dave and Phoebe look in the bag, it turns out there's a whole bunch of jewels. That like there's a receipt and everything. So it's legit. So the entire operation is blown, and now they know he knows. So, and he's like, well, you blew it, Carolyn. It's like, well, to be fair, it's not like you were all a well-oiled machine. Like, why? It's not like you guys were 100% professional in this. The way you handled everything, you put Beth in the most very compromised position. It's not like you handled this the best, you guys. So where this goes from here is where Rio asked her. It's like, at the end of the day, you got the angel on your shoulder, the devil on your shoulder. The question is, what are you going to do? And Beth's like, I'm screwed either way. So there's that. There's Annie's circumstances where it's like she had to talk to Greg. Greg was like, dude, I don't want... You know, it's like, oh, the kids at that school, they're like rich douchebags. And like, one kid got like Taylor Swift to play like the entire 1989 album. It's like, oh, that's crazy. I don't want Ben growing up thinking like that's okay and that's the type of life he could have at the school and everything. So he wants Annie to break the news to him and like pulling him out of the school, because it's like, I don't want him to be a dick. And so Annie's kind of struggling with that. And obviously Ben, it's like, yeah, Dad says I can't go to DC. This sucks. Yada, 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 so forth. And Annie was initially going to bust the bubble, but it's like, no, I'll talk to your dad, because she sees how important it is to Ben. But then it's like, yeah, oh, Nancy did my nails. Oh, at the salon? No, at home. And it's like, wait, what? And then the moment that happened, it clicks just when it clicks with with Annie. It's like, they're broke. That's what this is. Like, Greg he was too embarrassed to admit it, that they're not in a good position money-wise. So, which I love that, like, Annie brings that up in front of, like, Beth, which even Beth was kind of like, oh, they're celebrating, you know? So, especially for Annie, because Annie's always felt like, you know, like, especially when it came to the money and stuff like that, her lifestyle and everything, it's like, right, like, I'm kind of like, on the lower end. But now it's like, hey, she even brings it up to Greg, like, honestly, I'm making minimum wage, sure, but currently I'm making more than you guys, because apparently Nancy tried to grow the business too fast and it blew up in their face. So like they're kind of like total. So that's what this is all about. And obviously it's like this school's very important to Ben. He has a lot of friends here and stuff like that. So they want to keep up appearances. Ben would be a lot more understanding if you would admit, like, okay, honestly, you know your mom's circumstances. Well, Nancy and Greg's aren't great now. Honestly, my terrible circumstances are better than theirs. Granted, Ben might be a little like, oh my God, like, I can't believe it. But at the same time, I'm sure he'd be more understanding, be like, oh, and knowing that they're doing everything they can, which that's probably going to turn into an issue too. Annie being like, okay, like, taking all the legal money she's got to try and pay forward towards all, because she also has to be careful of like, yeah, I gotta still be keeping up appearances of I'm making minimum wage, even though I'm making, you know, all this money to kind of pay for Ben's school. You're going, because like Greg's going to be asking questions and Nancy's going to be asking questions. But it's also interesting because like this, you know, and even Greg's like, dude, I'm never going to hear the end of it. And it's like, you know, and he's like, nope, just getting started. It's like, oh, you want some sugar? Don't worry, it's right here. It's free. And it's just like rubbing it in his face. But it's also like, if she can rub it in his face, of course it's like, because Nancy has always been like high class, hoity-toity. So it's like, it's Annie's time to shine. So there's that. There's the Dean situation where Dean's like, don't worry, I bought this, like, hot tub. It's like, why? It's like, well, so that if you and the girls need to, like, have a conversation, you don't want anyone to hear anything about it. It's like, why would they be listening? I'm the informant. He's like, yeah, but, which I still think, I mean, I get Dean's justification to a certain extent, well, especially when he explains it, but I think there's still a possibility of them, like, screwing you over. You never know if the place is bugged, especially considering, like, Rio does on occasion has stopped by your house. Granted, they might not know that, so they probably wouldn't know to bug your place, but still. But Dean's justification is, I want to make sure nothing compromises this deal, because he's like, I need Nevada. Because obviously for Beth, it's like, I'm the one taking all the risk. And he's like, yes, but I'm the one that has the most to lose. I need Nevada, you know? So, which I'm sure plays a bit into, Beth's guilt and everything. I guess a key sign now in retrospect should have been like Rio showing up with the book, because they make it like, they're like ominous, being like, oh, did you find out? And he's like, yeah, Mom, Grandma, thanks you like Grisham, so yeah, it's like, here's a book. It's like, oh, tell her. It's like that, they were setting that up, and the entire time it's like, yeah, that's the point. They kind of put you on edge just to see how you react, because once again, he likes to see you squirm. But at the end, Dean's in the hot tub and be like, hey, tell me how your day was. Was it bad? And she's like, it was complicated. So their deal is compromised right now. So once again, if you lean in with the, because the argument could be like, they could think like Secret Service could think like, well, he was doing this just to test us, but the fact is they don't know that he knows about the wire and everything. So it's not completely screwed, but he thinks like, oh, Caroline, you screwed this up, and like kind of thinking it's more on Caroline's part that like she wasn't better at appearing to be a mom and everything. So she's catching more of the heat, even though it's just, once again, Rio's just smarter and ended up catching on. So obviously it's like, well, what is Beth going to do? It's like, after all this trouble, it would have just been better for Hitman to kill Rio, but also it's like, well, then Hitman would have been an issue all on his own right, and it's like Dean would have been in prison, so this helps out in the long run. So it's just kind of a thing of like, yeah, just things don't always work out. Just everything just has a tendency to fall apart. So it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.